Today I'm joined by Hannah Mills. We're going to take a look back at one of her medal races and she's going to talk us through how she made all of her decisions. Enjoy!
This is how the women go into their medal race. Here in Aarhus, the Japanese out in front, Camille Lecointre and Aloïse Retornaz of France in second, Hannah Mills and Ailey McIntyre in third place at the moment.
So we're going to have a little look at the race course, try and break it down a little bit and get a little insight into how you make your decisions.
But I'll do my best.
Olympians, they've got world champions breathing down their necks. It's going to be tough.
We definitely prioritise doing some upwind before the start. I look at the compass numbers a lot to see how much the shift range is, and when a gust hits to see if it tends to go right or left when that gust is hitting. We also use the other boats. You can get a sort of skewed perception of the race course by just what you've experienced. If you scan the race course and you look at the other boats and the angles they're sailing, it kind of gives you an idea of how shifty the course is across the whole course rather than just where you are. We have sort of 4 different types of day that we choose from before the start that we think it's going to be for that race or that day. We've got your sort of onshore and quite stable sea breeze type day where there's quite small oscillations. We know the fleet's going to be really compact. It's going to be really close racing. Then there's just sort of onshore where it's a bit more patchy and a bit more shifty. The breeze is a bit more unstable. So there's sort of bigger gains and losses, but often the pressure is quite hard to see. So it's a really visual head out the boat day. Then we've got your offshore kind of just wacky, shifty, pressure driven, quite fast paced shifts. And that's definitely a head out of the boat day, just sort of react, almost tap when the jib flaps day. And then we've got your offshore, or it could be onshore, but bandy type of day, which is more like a gain feature. So often there's a big bit of pressure that comes down one side or the other of the race course. And kind of lasts for the whole beat. So it's almost like a persistent shift for that beat. So that's kind of how we categorize the days. And then for each one of those, we kind of know the type of mindset that we need to be in. Both Ailey and myself, slightly different, but that we need to deliver in that sort of condition.
Overall, with 40 seconds to go, how's the start line looking, Jordan?
Yeah, pretty square. Slight advantage to the pin end, the port side of the line, away from the committee boat. The wind is just back around 120 degrees. Course is just on the 1 kilometre.
What would be your approach, given that information, in terms of how you're positioning on the start line?
For sure, we'll have started this race with that in mind, and it looks like we're lining up sort of in the middle of the line here at the moment, but to leeward of the pack. So yeah, maybe looking towards that left-hand side.
How far does your plan normally extend up the beat?
For us, I think we often probably think of the first third initially, and particularly in a medal race where that first gain is quite major because the race course is a little bit shorter. So that first gain is pretty huge. But you have your ideal plan of what you're trying to execute, and clearly here we wanted to execute a good start to head out to the left and try and probably squeeze out a few boats above us so we could get the tack in and get back and sort of reposition ourselves within the middle of the fleet would probably be, I'd assume, what we're trying to do. But yeah, it really depends on the scenario and also whether you manage to execute your chosen start.
With gold in their grasp and right at this boat end of the start line.
Slovenia, X-flag! Yep, got somebody over the line.
So someone is over early.
You guys did look pretty close, and you obviously made the choice that you were going to come back to make sure to clear yourselves. So that sort of throws you straight away into plan B mode, I guess.
If there's any doubt from either of us, then we'll go back. So at least we kind of know the set play as to what we're going to do there. And I can't remember if both of us felt it or one of us felt it, but someone did. And so, yeah, we decided to turn back. And literally in that instant, pretty much, the gold and probably the silver is gone. And from that moment on, we're doing everything we can to try and keep the bronze medal.
Yeah, we actually see that the British team of Hannah Mills and McIntyre is also returning.
So they're starting again. So they.
again, it's such a toss-up of what type of condition is it, and let's go off the facts that we think that it's a sort of onshore but quite pressure-driven, quite shifty but hard to see type of day. I think it's always a balance between, am I in a clear lane, and how much of a good shift am I on, and how much pressure am I in? And we're always trying to weigh that up. We're always trying to make sure we don't get completely pinned out to an edge, so we've got no options. We know other boats are going to tack on us. So you're just trying to keep the boat in as clear air as possible, but not compromise your decision making too much. So you're thinking ahead a lot, looking at the other boats, where they're positioning, where can I go so that there's the least chance of somebody tacking and taking my wind.
Not to take the risk. So these are our top 4 in the 470 women's, trying to get the smallest of advantage. Di Sale and Dubini of Italy in second.
Does anything change in that middle part of the beat?
Yeah, the middle's often the sort of most challenging part because everyone's really spread out. If you're not on the front row, then it can get a bit sort of all consuming. You just feel like you're battling boats the whole time. So definitely when we're on the front row and we've got a clear lane and we're kind of in the mix for rounding in the top 5, it certainly feels a lot easier. You're mostly just trying to herd the fleet, so you're just trying to stay with the majority, slightly ahead, and just protect the kind of the good start and good sort of first part of the beat that you've managed to achieve. When you're back in the pack, like we are here, obviously, you've got to be so much more conscious of not getting to ley lines too early or not getting stuck with packs of boats, because kind of like going downwind, this is the same upwind. When you're in packs of boats, it's just slow. Like you just slow each other down the whole time. You end up doing more tacks. You end up pointing a bit higher to try and pinch boats out, all that kind of thing. So yeah, the being back in the pack in the middle of the race course, I think it's when you have that space, you've managed to get a lane and you're on a reasonable shift. That's the time to just take the moment to have that chat of what's been going on, like where have the gains been, why have those gains happened, and how can we utilize those gains, like what are our options, because it's very easy for the front few boats to just tack where they want to tack and get all the good shifts, but the back few boats, you're trying to do the same. So yeah, you're just trying to ask those questions of what can we do, how can we maximize our gains.
So it generally does work that way. If you go to an extreme, you can make a gain, but you don't get a choice when you come back. If a wind bends against you, you can't make a decision. So you get boats working the middle.
When do you split?
Aarhus was a sort of venue that was always shifty. Even if it didn't look that shifty, there was lots going on. And so often being on the edges there was quite risky, really, because you could almost guarantee a shift going against you as you're trying to get back across the course. But I think it's about the opportunity in the race and when that presents itself. And I think it'd be very easy for us here, because we're now back, to panic and just hit a corner at this point in the race. There's so much race to play out that I kind of know that in our heads we'll just be thinking we just need to round that top mark in contention, still in the race, having not made a massive loss. Yeah, and if an opportunity presented itself that we could see, there was clearly a bit more wind somewhere and we could be confident, then we'd go for it. But until that moment arises that we are confident in a game, we're just going to sail fast, sail the shifts, try and claw a bit of distance back to the leaders and not panic.
4 knots.
It's what we call dirty air, Evie.
Yeah, it's a position where you don't want to be in. Actually, to say it in a simple way, the Spanish are taking away the wind from...
Do you have any, like a list of rules that you follow to decide whether you're going to defend and straight hoist versus jibe hoisting?
Yeah, definitely. I think we particularly have one if it's under sort of 6 knots. There's got to be a very, very good reason to jibe set, just because it's a lot slower. There's often boats on the starboard lay that mean you just sort of sail through a bit of a hole. So there's got to be a very strong reason to jibe set in those conditions. So that kind of makes the decision a bit easier. But if the breeze is up a bit more than that, then long tack and long jibe is a big one. If the wind's relatively stable and there's not been a big gain from pressure on either side. But if the wind's a little bit more stable and onshore perhaps, then the long jibe is quite a big driver for our decision making. Just it just gives you options. It buys you a bit more time to play the shifts down that leg. So we'd often talk about long jibe, but the most important thing is to get a fast hoist away from the mark, nail that manoeuvre. And then often you've bought yourself a boat length or two on the boats behind. And if you want to then jibe, you've got that opportunity. So our default is usually a straight set, unless we've got a pretty strong reason to jibe set.
That position still holding the Japanese in the gold medal position. Mainly because one of their nearest challengers, Mills and McIntyre, went back to start again. They're round that mark now in 7th.
You're highlighted on the video here. Again, a little bit like the top third. How early are you thinking about the leeward gate?
We consider obviously the bias, which one's closer to us is the kind of simplest way to do it. You know, when you're roughly in the middle of the course, is there one that's obviously closer? Has there been a big shift down that run? We'll talk about that. Probably about where we are on that freeze frame, we'll start talking about whether there's been a big shift. Or has there been a big gain due to pressure is the other one. You know, has one side come in, but you don't think the wind's really shifted? Well, they probably had more pressure. So those are the kind of three factors, is which one's closer, has there been a big shift, or has there been a big gain due to pressure? And then I'll always take a look back upwind, probably roughly where the Spanish boat is there, number one. I'll have a big look back upwind to make that final decision as to what I think, which gate we should go around, because that still gives us just enough time to position ourselves to be able to go around the chosen one.
Between the Spanish out in front and the Italians trying to chase them down. Di Salendubini.
One thing we use quite a lot is the wave angle. You know, there's often a little bit of chop or a little bit of something, and you know, you go around the windward mark and you're on a set angle. You know what shift you went around the windward mark on, and you can sort of feel how you're surfing those bits of chop or swell or whatever. And then if that changes, you know, how the boat's sailing down those bits of chop, you kind of know there's been a shift one way or the other. So that's generally the way I tell it the easiest, is to feel how the waves are against the boat. Yeah.
Choosing to go the other way. And
one thing I probably forgot to mention on the downwind in terms of choosing a gate is how busy is that mark that you want to go round, and sometimes if it's fairly not too obvious which ones we'll often prioritize going around the least busy mark, just to give ourselves a bit more space, because as I said earlier, boats together often go slower than boats that have a bit more space. But in terms of coming out on a lift or a header, I think the bigger thing is, you know, if you come around the mark on a header, can you tack? Or is there a whole bunch of boats coming back downwind? In which case, that's not ideal, because you're just a bit stuck until they've all gone past, because it's really slow tacking in the middle of the downwind boats. But I think the main thing is, what's your strategy? Like, why have you chosen to go around that mark? Sometimes it's the shift that's more important, and sometimes it's the pressure that's more important.
Now Hannah Mills at the back of the boat there, looking for the finish line and looking back as well to see where the French are. But the Brits finish in 4th place, and that is enough to give them the bronze medal position.
Thank you very much for taking us through your medal race. And,
my pleasure.
And yeah, good luck for the future ones that'll come up very soon, hopefully. And yeah, thank you very much.